Hi everyone, health tip this week. I'm going to be starting the series on the 3 substitutions to be doing, the easy substitutions that you hopefully can do, just to make some quick changes in your eating habits and what you're putting into your body to have a big impact on your health. So this week we're going to be talking about substituting the bad fats. Now fats have been getting a bad rap in general. So it's kind of interesting how things have changed. So back in the old days, I think Time magazine had this really bad picture of eggs and bacon, and it all had this big sad face on it because they thought that was all bad for us. And now the tide's turning, and back then, we have to go to margarine, etc. And now the tides have been turning, and now they have butter, and butter is back, and all this kind of stuff. So there's always a bit of confusion, and I know the pendulum will probably swing too much this way, and everyone's going to go too crazy with the fat and probably be too much, and then they're going to find out all this bad stuff about it on this end. But basically, we want you just to get the conceptual idea of what kind of switches to be making. So principally in chiropractic, we like to talk about the body's innate intelligence, and thinking about, as far as diet, we always talk about ancestral eating. So, like if an animal, let's say a lion, is out in the wild, they're supposed to be chasing game, and they eat game. Whatever they catch, that's what they're eating. So they have the big fangs, and they're supposed, they eat them out, they rip open the guts, and they eat, that kind of thing, and so they're eating the flesh. So, for example, a lion, it produces its own vitamin C, and so it doesn't need to really get it from the diet. But back in the old days with the humans, when they used to go, back a long time ago, when they used to be out on the boats for a long time, they'd come back and they'd have all this white fur on their tongue, and they were getting scurvy, and they didn't know that they needed to get the vitamin C somehow. So, then they started putting limes on the boat, and that's why they were called limeys. But, the lion doesn't have to eat an orange, right, because he's producing his own, that kind of thing. So we're just trying to think about, well, if we take the human body back in time and put it in its ideal environment, what would it kind of be eating? And so, really things like trans fats and margarine and that doesn't really exist in the environment. And so there's some animal husbandry, like I'm thinking, well, probably butter is actually pretty good if you're getting the right kind. So, there's people that have had, cows or raising animals and those kind of things and being with nature. But so the fat substitution is this. Back in the old days, when they were sort of telling us to get away from fats, they thought that saturated fats that you would find in lard and in butter and those kind of things, they thought saturated fats were bad and clogging up the arteries, and so they told everyone to get away from that. And so they started pushing something called PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and most of those came from vegetable oils. So the problem is, vegetable oil is awesome for your health when it's inside the vegetable, because it's protected by all these polyphenols and a bunch of other things that are in the vegetable. As soon as you extract it from the vegetable and just take the oil out itself, it's very easily becomes rancid, and then it becomes not good for you. So it becomes like a poison, and then you heat it up and it's even worse. So these fats in the vegetables, not to get too complicated, but fats have these carbons, and there's bonds between them. So if there's a lot of polyunsaturated fatty acids, they call them, they're not saturated, the bonds are a little weaker. When you heat it up, they can kind of start folding around on themselves, and they start becoming polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and all these other things that are sort of cancer producing and not really good for our health. So we don't want to be using vegetable oils, and unfortunately because of that big push in the industry, a lot of companies that were frying things in lard and that kind of stuff, they said, oh, well, let's make it all vegetable oil, and everyone thought it was being a healthy move, and unfortunately it probably wasn't. So vegetable oils, we're probably going to want to try to avoid those as much as possible. So the worst one right now to avoid is obviously canola oil. Canola is actually a name they came up with. It's actually rapeseed oil, and so that's a vegetable oil, and pretty much you're going to be guaranteed, if any product you take has canola oil in it, the canola has been a genetically modified crop. So a lot of canola is grown in Canada, and so you really want to avoid that as much as possible. Unfortunately, it's a very, very cheap oil because of the subsidies, and the farmers are subsidized to grow the rape seeds and all that kind of stuff to make the canola oil. And it's very, very perfusive. Even a lot of health foods, unfortunately, you'll say organic, 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 everything looks great, and then you get to the oil, and it's canola oil inside the health food product, unfortunately. So really you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So all the oils like safflower, sunflower, corn oil, vegetable oil, all of those things that are in the big plastic containers in the grocery store, you really want to try to avoid those as much as possible, or eliminate them ideally. The other one is hydrogenated vegetable oils. So sometimes they'll add their bubbling hydrogen through these things to make it a little firmer, harder to add it to products and those kind of things. They increase shelf life and that kind of thing. Hydrogenated oils are devastating for our health, so they're not good. And then the last one are trans fats. So trans fats are vegetables that, you know, if the fat should have this sort of configuration like this, when you do a trans fat it kind of gets switched around like this. And they were using that to make margarines and butters and to make it more stable and these kind of things. But these things are devastating for the cells of our body. So our body are made up of billions and billions of cells. The membrane around all of our cells is like a fluid kind of double fat layer. And trans fats have a tendency to be very rigid. Fats should be nice and mobile and fluid. But so like to make something not melt at room temperature, they'll be adding trans fats to it to make it like margarine and those kind of things. But what happens is, when those fats get into our cells instead of being nice and fluid like this, they start to become rigid too. And the half-life of trans fats is about 51 days or something like that. So it takes like almost like a month and a half for your body to get rid of trans fats. So basically almost 120 days or so to actually really completely get rid of if you had a meal with trans fats in it, it takes about 120 days for your body to have that kind of replaced or taken out of the cells again. So that's really not good. And of course the big source of those would be potato chips and French fries and those kind of things. So what do you do instead of these fats? So you want to switch over and try to look for the healthier fats. So what are the healthier fats? Let's have a look. So now we want to look at what are the good fats. So the good fats in these cases would be fats coming from vegetable products or animal products that are kind of grown or raised in a healthy way. So it's been a number of years, and it was maligned for so many years because it was a saturated fat, but probably number one is coconut. Coconut flesh, coconut oil, coconut water, all of those things, they're not all fats, but when they grind up the flesh of the coconut, they can get oils out of it. So you can get coconut oil. Coconut oil often is kind of a solid at room temperature, and they say, oh look, that'll clog up your arteries. But our bodies aren't room temperature, our bodies are many more degrees higher than that. And so coconut oil is probably one of the better ones for putting on your body, for maybe putting it on a skillet. I'm not really big on people frying things anyway, like having it full of oil and frying things, but most of the oils here, if you just saute with them, so you know, if you're turning up your temperature, don't maybe go past maybe like 3 or 4 on the dial that goes up to 10, just warming things up or sauteing them lightly or like a light stir fry, then these oils will stay pretty solid and they won't be causing a problem. You never want to see smoke coming off your grill when you're using these things. So coconut oil is probably the number one oil in general. There's so many uses for this. Probably a video in the future, there's something you can do called oil pulling with coconut oil, and I'll tell you what kind to get, that you can actually do it in your mouth, and it helps to be antiseptic, antibacterial, cleans out your teeth and all sorts of things, and has a lot of properties for your body in general. But this is one you want to be adding to your diet. Maybe about 2 tablespoons over the course of a day might be not a bad amount. So where do you put it? You can sort of, like I say, saute your vegetables with it. Some people put it in their shakes. Just a small amounts, because if you put too much in, it'll be all bubbly on the top and kind of gross and separate it out. But it's good to have fatty substances in your shakes, because fats help the nutrients that you've been blending get into your system. They help to transport your nutrients into your body. So coconut oil is probably the number one oil. Avocado is a really good one too. So avocado oil is one of the really good sort of just general good fats, and avocados in general are really versatile, and you can do a lot of things with them. So you cut them up, put them in your salad, but you can use them to make smoothies, and you can make pudding out of them and all sorts of things, and I'll try to make some videos on using avocados and some interesting things you can do with that too. So other than that, these are plant-based. If you want to get into animal-based products, some people are just trying to avoid animal products in general. But if you're going for butter, butter can be really, really good if you get the right kind. So I've mentioned it in other videos, and you probably know I'm going to be repeating the same thing, but you should be getting butter from what we call organic grass-fed butter, meaning the cows are eating grass. The ones that are producing the cream that makes this butter, they're eating what they're supposed to eat as grass. If you just get a generic butter off the shelf, those cows have been fed genetically modified grains, they've been having antibiotics and all sorts of other things. So if you get cows that are eating grass, they're producing the right kind of fats, and inside butter from grass-fed cows, you're going to have things like CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, which is really good for burning fat. You're going to have a really good ratio of the omega-3s and the omega-6 oils and those kind of things inside the fat, and there's a lot of really great benefits to it. So maybe 2 tablespoons of that a day, 2 tablespoons of this a day might not be bad. So once again, this can be used to, to line your thing. If you're going to be like sauteing some vegetables, you can add it to, let's say, maybe you make some healthy pancakes or something, put it on the healthy pancakes. If you're eating a healthy type of grains or breads, you can obviously use the butter for that, etc., etc. So these are sort of like the top 3 that we would be looking at. Almond oil is also pretty good. Some other oils, maybe if you really need to fry things at a higher temperature, grape, not rape, grape. So rapeseed oil, R-A-P-E, is canola oil. Grape seed from seeds of grapes. That one has a very high smoke point, so that's very stable if you really need to heat something up quite high. Rice bran oil, I think, is another one that has a pretty high smoke point, meaning you could, if you need to fry something. And then avocado oil is actually pretty good too, as far as heating up things pretty high if you really need to fry it at a high temperature. But like I say, for the most part, if you can kind of get these things at low temperatures, just sauteing things and keeping the temperature low but adding these oils, it'll be a great addition to your life and helping your cells and your body function better and giving you more energy. And surprisingly enough, they found that when people eat these kind of fats and get rid of those other ones, those ones actually make people gain weight, cause fatigue, tiredness, and all those things. When you start to use these actually help people lose weight, have more energy. Coconut oil has been really great to show increased brain activity, brain function. It helps your body clean out a lot of things, etc. So that's the first substitution. Substitute the bad fats and switch it over to the good fats. So that's substitution number 1, and we'll talk about number 2 next time. Take care. Have a great week.